Cheers, guys. Epix911. Welcome to VR podcast number 4. Want to start things off on this Sunday with just a recap. Let's make it a high-level recap of CES 2018. Don't want to spend too much time on it, maybe a third quarter of the show, because there's some exciting stuff gaming-wise that I want to get to. Now, if there was a little bit of gloat in my, validation of my hunch, my earlier hunch that 2018 would have a real focus on wireless, CES definitely seemed to validate that. But probably as important, I think, is content. If I think there's going to be an important secondary focus for 2018, definitely I think that's going to be content. Now, I say content because there's some excitement VR-wise beyond gaming. Gaming is my personal favorite, but if we look at the full palette of possibilities, whether it's experiences, stuff like the Google Earth VR, applications like Tilt Brush, I think there's a range of experiences beyond just gaming that 2018 is going to be amazing for. So we're going to get to that, but let's start off with CES 2018. So probably the biggest thing to come out of CES 2018, other than the wireless stuff, was the Pimax criticism. And I just want to be clear, that was certainly the case on this channel, and I believe on most other channels. It wasn't a damning of the technology, just an urgency on the part of consumers, those lining up for a Pimax, to make sure that they know, they being Pimax, that they're aware that you know of these issues and that you expect them to be fixed 100% at the time of launch. And I think Pimax, even though they were radio quiet for a little while, they were quick enough to address it. Now, granted, it probably would have been better for them to come out preemptively, right? Had they come out with this right at the start of CES and said, look, guys, and I'm going to kind of roll in their excuse for this into this. But, well, let's start with the excuse first, or the reasoning as far as Pimax is concerned. So an employee by the name of Zunshu, and I might be butchering that, Xunshu, Zunshu, let's go with Zunshu just for now. So his official response on behalf of Pimax is basically summed up as follows. They made changes to the brightness of the LED screens that took power from other areas, including tracking technology. And that was the reason tracking and some of the visuals were spotty. I don't have any reason to not take that at face value. Like I said, even initially, we just need to make sure they understand we're aware of the issue and we expect it to be fixed. All of us are also aware that they've had this $15 million in Series A funding. There's no financial reason for this to not be fixed, and there's certainly no pressing time issue. The holiday season's already behind us. If it takes them another month, 2 months, hell, a quarter even, to start shipping out those units, I don't think people are going to mind. In fact, quality is going to trump that pretty much every single time. If you ask people, would you rather wait a little bit and have something with no issues? Yeah, 9 times out of 10, that's probably the direction they're going to go. And I don't see that as any different here. So I'm not going to tear that apart, not on this show. I'm just going to assume at face value, it's correct. That was the reasoning. Where does that leave us? Okay, so that leaves them with confidence, really. Because if you look at the last kind of statement, they say we use valve tracking technology. The tracking performance won't be an issue at all in the final product. In fact, during kind of the height of the criticism, a lot of people were quick to say exactly that. Look, they're supposedly using valve tracking technology. There shouldn't be an issue. If there is, it's probably something minor, something on the periphery, something that they're going to be able to address. And, well, like I said, they've chosen Pimax themselves to run with that as the reason. So let's take that at face value and assume that is going to be addressed. So what are they doing moving forward? Well, they're going to kind of stage this, I think, properly. Anytime you have a project, and I've managed lots of projects from drawing board, inception, right through to, finalizing a project, it's always a good idea to do pilot testing first. So if you're going to do something large scale, make sure that you cover your scenarios kind of in a mini live situation first. And that's kind of what they're doing. So what they're going to do is they're going to send units to select group of the backers for them to test things out and ensure these issues have been resolved. So I like that. And then their plan beyond that is to ship the units themselves to backers. So all in all, yeah, I think it's going to be exciting. And if they can truly live up to that, if they can ship with everything fixed, and it can kind of go back to what Swiviver, fellow YouTuber, what his feedback was on the Pimax, and I should have looked up the event. Can't remember right now off the top of my head. But if it goes back to his feedback and his few negatives are addressed, look, I think it's going to be a solid unit, and I think it'll be a solid alternative to the other Steam OpenVR devices that are out there, especially with that larger field of view. Again, assuming all that warping that was noticed is at least minimized, if not addressed altogether. That'll remain to be seen. All right, what else in CES? Well, we had some different things on the haptics front. We had some game stuff come out. One of those I'm really excited about, Apex Construct. We'll get to that in a few minutes. The one that I want to talk about, let's kind of just shut the door on CES. I think we've pretty much said everything we need to say about that. The rest is just a wait and see game, right? We're going to wait and see TPcast Plus, Vive Wireless, what Rift's response is going to be, or the response, I guess, from Oculus, Facebook at large with some of this stuff. Are they going to have their own solution? Then we've, of course, got the speculation on Microsoft, if they're going to console it. I strongly still feel that they are wrapping up a surprise for us. We'll have to wait and see for that. So with that said, yeah, wait and see on those things. Another wait and see, but gaming related, is Elite Dangerous. I want to talk about that. Now, I've made it pretty clear on this channel, I'm not in favor of fanboyism. Doesn't mean you can't get enthused about a product, of course. And like I said, at gunpoint, I'll be able to, in sequence list off of the big three, my favorite to my least favorite. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the kind of fanatical fanboyism that is the ultimate extreme, where it's that device, all others kind of be damned, right? I don't like that kind of attitude. I don't think it's healthy for anything, really. I think we still need to be united in terms of as a VR community. And if the way the VR YouTubers is going about it is any indication, I think it's going to be fantastic. And there's going to be a lot of camaraderie. There's still going to be attrition. Companies are going to fall to the wayside. But I truly believe we can get to those open promise standards, and we will eventually get away from that exclusivity crap, at least the volume of it that we've seen the first year. So, Elite Dangerous. The reason I brought that up, the fanboyism thing, is it's rife not just for technology, but the gaming side of things too. If you are somebody who likes Elite Dangerous, chances are, you've had discussions with somebody who doesn't share your views. And the people that generally, a subset of them that don't share those views are people who like Star Citizen. My opinion on that is, who the frick cares? The more of these type of epic space games there are, the better. Half a dozen? Sure, I'll play them. If 3 of them are above fantastic, I'll make it my priority for the next few months to purchase those 3. So as far as I'm concerned, the more the merrier. I love me space games. So this isn't a discussion about which is better or, do I like Elite Dangerous better? No, I have not played Star Citizen because I haven't felt it's at that point where it's going to be of service to me. And what I mean by that, it's clearly at this point still very prototype and beta driven. It's not the complete vision yet. I want the other people, because I was a supporter of Star Citizen, but the ones who were really passionate about molding that initial vision, to be part of that. Let them have their fun and kind of see that product follow through on all those initial promises until we get something that I would consider as the first full version that kind of ties those various promises all together, right? We're not there yet. So I'm excited about Star Citizen, but I honestly haven't really tried it other than keeping up to date with, big updates, big summaries. So I know now, for example, yes, they have a mix of first person, the home-based stuff, the planetary. I'm aware of that. I just haven't personally tried it. Just wanted to get that out of the way because that is something that still comes up from time to time. No, I love them both and I can't wait to try them both. But Elite Dangerous was the first one to offer a more complete product. And that's because of all kinds of reasons. Like I said, we don't have to get into the minutia of that. Suffice it to say, they have announced their next big update. Now, to date, they've been using kind of a subscription model. And we've seen some pretty cool things from Elite Dangerous. Yes, the game is very grind heavy. I'm okay with that. I was always aware of that. It's kind of been the MO of that series in general, not just from the first Elite, but if you look at the 2 Frontier games, for example, they were also very grindy. I like that because I like that kind of roguelike aspect to the gameplay. That's not to say they haven't updated other things. For example, one of the big things with Horizon, the planet landings. We've seen more cooperative stuff where you and buddies can share a bridge, wing formations, right? We're not at the point where we've got atmospheric planet landings. I do hope we get to that point eventually and we'll be able to depart our ships and tool around like that. But for now, it's planets without atmospheres using, our vehicles. We can fly to the surface and then drive around, do quests that way. Well, this update is going to take things in a bit of a new direction. So what they're doing with this, they're calling it basically this update beyond Chapter 1. Obviously hinting that there's going to be a Chapter 2 and a 3, etc. And this is kind of introducing the Thargoids. And I shouldn't say introducing, let's use the word reintroducing, because they've been part of Elite lore from the beginning. We've seen hints of that throughout the Horizon update, especially at the end. Well, this is going to formally introduce them. It's also going to introduce a new Alliance ship called the Chieftain. It's going to focus on missions that you can do with those wing formations. So where I said you could fly with buddies. That is probably the thing personally that I've been waiting for the longest. Being able to take my buddy, Exidy, my best friend, for example, and fly around with him and do quests, I think is just going to be absolutely a hell of a lot of fun. What they're going to do to approach that is likewise, they've got an open beta. That's going to start on the 25th of this month, so very shortly. It's going to be free and open. After that, once they've got the issues that no doubt will arise from that beta testing, they may do another one, but their plan at this point is to launch first quarter 2018. And that's first quarter calendar year, so January, February, March. So hopefully by around Easter time, we are going to see this get released. And I, for one, can't wait. But what I wanted to talk about, and this is going to be one of those where I got to make sure I describe kind of the visuals. I get asked a lot with Elite Dangerous about controls. I'm not going to rehash what I talked about already, where I say the right controller for the right job. Let's assume you agree with me that that's a HOTAS for Elite Dangerous, okay? Well, the next discussion is what constitutes a decent HOTAS? And I'm going to kind of start with the upper echelon, kind of not the highest. I would say your best kind of base level option. And that, of course, is the Sci-Tech X52 that I'm holding up right now. If you are watching this, well, you probably know what it looks like already. This is the HOTAS pair that the in-game controls were based on, okay? This is kind of the standard default recommended controller. If you want the full Elite Dangerous experience, they recommend that you use this controller. And I just realized how dusty it is now. Sure, I can hide that from you audio guys, but not the visual guys. But yeah, that'll need to be dedusted. So kind of consider that your base default recommended. And it's fantastic. It's also over $200. Do you need to spend that much? And with SciTech having been bought out, of course, we've got Logitech in the picture now. My answer to that would be no. Even though I've got that unit, let's be real, I bought that at a time when I had a lot more play money than I do now. If I was entering the picture now, I probably would have been happy. No, I know I would have been happy with something like the Thrustmaster. So I'm holding that up now. This is the Thrustmaster joystick, and it is compatible with PlayStation 4. You can use this with the PlayStation 4 and with the PC. It can also be joined together. So you've got the throttle and the flight stick just a couple inches apart when you do that, when you assemble it that way. It can also be taken apart. I recommend whenever you play Elite Dangerous with HOTAS, you play with them apart, and you play with them in the exact same position as your in-game avatar. It just does so much for the immersion, guys. When you can kind of sneak peek out from underneath your HMD and see you holding the controls and then peek back into game and it's in the same damn spot, it just does so much for immersion and presence. That there is probably the biggest argument, that even if 6 Degree of Freedom controllers like the Touch and Wand were as good, assuming you can map all the controls, I still don't think it would be as immersive for that very reason. So this controller set under $100. What's the big difference between these two? Well, there's a couple of things. The throttle, that's probably the biggest difference, has to do with the throttle. So with the Thrustmaster, you've got a neutral position, which is kind of the throttle placed midway between all the way forwards and all the way backwards. Going back from that spot puts you in reverse. Going forward from that spot puts you forward. That's something that's very intuitive and it's very easy to get used to. In fact, I had purchased this unit first before I got the SciTech, and it took a while with the SciTech to get used to that because the SciTech's default kind of neutral position is all the way back, and anything pushed forward is forward kind of thrust. To reverse it, you actually need to activate a button, and then that whole range in the other direction becomes your reverse. So it takes a little bit of learning. Other aspects, though, if you're comparing them, very, very similar. The other must-have feature that I think you need is the twist on the base of the flight stick. So if you can do that twist to make your ship rotate and assign rotate to that, that's huge. So Thrustmaster, if the price difference is $125 difference between the two, is it about that? Yeah, let's say $120 difference. The difference in how they actually perform and feel isn't equal to that $120 in my opinion. It's maybe a $25 difference. If you want the best, yes, go with the X52 Pro. If you're okay for settling with second best and want to save a metric crap ton of money, go with the Thrustmaster. There's still going to be a segment of you guys that might not have a HOTAS, but you might have one of these babies lying around. And this is Logitech's Extreme 3D Pro, which is essentially a standalone flight stick. You've got some options here. You can try and find, I think Logitech still makes a standalone throttle rather, and you could pair that up with this. You could map them both to the controls, or you can get by just using this. It's obviously not as good. I think the throttle is huge for delivering the full experience, but it is doable. It does have stuff like the twist to rotate your ship, and it's got a hell of a lot of buttons that you can map different functions to. Between this and say the mouse and or keyboard, you could kind of come up with a hybrid that's okay. But in the long run, I wouldn't recommend using this. Sure, learn the game, see if you like it with this, but then when you're ready to really get into it, at least get something like the Thrustmaster. Now, the argument becomes easier with the Thrustmaster if you've got a PlayStation 4 and you like these types of games. Then it's almost a no-brainer. Like I said, it's not the difference price-wise that you would expect, but then to also be able to open up the PlayStation library, yeah, that would be freaking huge. So that's kind of where you sit with controls for the game. Get yourself HOTAS, absolutely, but know that you don't have to get the most expensive. And guys, the X52 Pro, like I said, is not the top of the line. What's that one? The Warthog. I mean, you can really nerd it up and you can go over $500. No different than with the racing wheel pedal combos where you can go in excess of $500. You can do that with HOTAS too. And it's pretty obscene. And unless you are a complete enthusiast, wholly unnecessary. But yeah, a hell of a lot of fun. And again, if you got the play money and that's what you enjoy, yeah, why the hell not, right? All right, so that's pretty much Elite Dangerous. The next game I want to talk about, and I touched on it, is Apex Construct. It was in the VR Roundup, the last episode actually, where I talked about it. This is the one that Jamie Feltham said to him represents the true second wave of virtual reality content. And he backed that up by saying it's going to lead to full campaign, full game style games. And my opinion, my interpretation of what he was saying, and I also said this in the show, was what he meant by that was not taking a mechanic like bow and arrow and simply just going to the lowest common denominator gimmick with it, which is wave-based, right? The easiest to kind of, from a development point of view, to build a game around would be wave-based. It's the modern Space Invaders, or, well, that's not a good example. The better one would be like a Pong style, right? It's kind of wave-based, think of it as like a Pong style, kind of simplicity, basically. They can be good. They can bring unique stuff to the table, but for the most part, it's so prevalent because it's the easiest from a development point of view. Not the case with Apex Construct. Here's a game that takes the bow and arrow mechanic, and let's talk about that for a sec. Why so many games in virtual reality using the bow and arrow? Because it works. It works really, really well. Touch controllers, and this goes back to the right controller for the right job. Touch controllers are fantastic for mimicking bow and arrow. And it has to do with the haptics. It has to do with the fact that it's something that requires two-handed precision to pull off and a range of motion away from kind of like a center point. In other words, you start with your bow and arrow just kind of notched, your controllers together, and then the natural movement to kind of pull that bowstring back just works so intuitively with those controllers. You're simply moving it back and then adding haptics to that to make it feel as if there's tension in that string, right? Or the release portion of it. And I've seen bow and arrow mechanics do both or combination of that, and it works just really, really well. And yet, we haven't seen an actual real full game built around that. And that, I think, is the thrust of what Jamie was kind of speaking around, but didn't kind of come out and directly say. But I think that was kind of what he had his thumb on the pulse of. So the game itself is going to support both teleportation and smooth locomotion, which I know we've kind of come to expect as normal and, or standard, I guess normal, a bad word, more a standard one. What I like about it, do yourselves a favor, guys. I showed the trailer on VR Roundup, but I also took a portion, and it's floating around, I'll put it in the link of the description, of the 8 minutes of gameplay footage. They give you a much better idea of what this game all kind of mixes into its play style. There's a little bit of a stealth aspect. There's absolutely the wave-based style mechanic of enemies coming towards you. There are portions of that, for sure. But I really like the stealth mechanic, and I like the fact that it appears to have a really good storyline. Maybe not the most original storyline you've ever heard. And I now know, having watched that 8 minutes fully, it's pronounced father. They just got a little bit creative with the spelling. That is kind of the protagonist AI, right? The one that's on your side. Then you've got mother, your supposed antagonist slash foe, who is the AI that is kind of throwing constructs against you to kind of stop you. Well, what you're not sure about, and this kind of unfolds, and you see a little bit of that in those 8 minutes of gameplay, is everything as it appears on the surface. In other words, is father really the good person? You know, maybe things aren't quite as they seem. So I like that aspect of it. And of course, I love the voice, which they describe as an Ultron type voice. Absolutely, just kind of really gets you in to the gameplay style. So if I had to answer, other than the obvious, I'm always open to, like I said, space games, RPGs. Those are the kind of two where, hell, even strategy games. Although I haven't yet seen a compelling virtual reality one. There are some decent ones. I'm talking the kind of strategy that I really like the Civilization style. And I don't know if it's because VR isn't really suited to that, or we just haven't seen someone be able to crack that open yet. But back to Apex Construct, yeah, probably one of the games I'm most excited about in 2018. Can't wait. How about you guys? What has you all excited? So for me, the 1 and 2, the Elite update, followed by Apex Construct, and then of course, like I said, RPGs, space games, 3rd and 4th right after that. Let me know in the comments below. Just like the last episode, I'm going to have this available via SoundCloud. So if you're watching me, can't finish the show, and you want to kind of finish it off driving or make that part of your morning commute, which thankfully here in Halifax is never going to be part of my reality again. I don't know if I ever mentioned that, guys, but an hour and 20 minutes each way in Vancouver. Almost 2 business days in my car every week. Here, 15 minutes max. So if you don't have that luxury and you do have a long commute, yeah, podcasts are fantastic for that. Maybe listen to me there. All right, guys, that is it for this podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. As always, cheers, guys.